Today we have a pair of subcompact crossovers to test out, and while they may not be as flashy as some of the other cars we compare, they're still quite popular. Value is the name of the game.
The Honda HR-V was one of the first players in the subcompact market, and it's just gotten a new refresh. But the Ford EcoSport is a latecomer, and it wants to take its crown. So let's see if it stacks up.
The Honda here is powered by a 1.8-liter four-cylinder engine and is mated to a CVT. It makes 141 horsepower and 127 pound-feet of torque. Now this touring model features all-wheel drive and is rated to get 28 miles per gallon combined. Now it's nothing too sporty or fast, and there's a sport mode and paddle shifters to make the ride a little bit more engaging. The Ford uses a slightly larger engine, a 2-liter unit that makes 166 horsepower and 149 pound-feet of torque. Now this is paired to a 6-speed automatic, and it's a little less fuel efficient, earning 25 miles per gallon combined.
The HR-V looks about how you'd expect a car in this class to look. That is to say, okay. Although it does look pretty good today next to the EcoSport, which is, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Basically what Honda did here was they took a Fit and a CR-V, they smushed them together, and then presto bismo, we have an HR-V. This is the touring package, and it comes with black details, body color side skirts, and LED headlights. Moving swiftly along to the EcoSport. Well, it's a bit of a dog, honestly. It looks like a jube. I can tell that they were trying to go for Ford Edge styling, but they haven't succeeded. It looks really bad. This is the sport model though, and it comes with vinyl package on the hood to give you a racing feel, I guess. One thing to mention though is that this EcoSport comes with a hatch that doesn't open in the traditional way. No, instead what it does is it opens this way. You gotta be careful if you're opening it in a parking lot because you might smash your kid as he's riding by on a bike. But I guess it's easier to put groceries in because you don't have to lean under. I don't know. Frankly, it's an ugly car. The Honda's the better looking car here.
The interior of the HR-V Touring is actually really decently appointed. You see, the seats feature this double-stitched leather upholstery, and there's a ton of space in the cabin. In fact, the car features magic seats that fold both downwards and upwards, so you get tons more space than the EcoSport. The only downside, however, is that there just isn't a lot of space for items. I mean, you've got these cubbies, but they don't seem that practical. This car does feature Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support, which is very handy, but if you don't use either of those systems, you're stuck with the stock infotainment, and it's really slow and laggy. You're not going to enjoy that at all. One thing I really do like, though, is the gauge cluster. You see, on the right-hand side, there's this little pod that shows you your navigation instructions, even if you're using Android Auto, which is super helpful. On the other hand, why won't it show me what my cruise control is set to?
Well, it's not bad in here. These seats are pretty comfy, and I actually don't mind cloth seats, especially when you consider it against this chalky leather that you get in cheap cars. But I will say that the HR-V is much nicer inside. That said, I much prefer this infotainment system. Ford Sync is quick to react, and it does all the things you want it to do. This one comes with nav, it comes with Bluetooth, and you can plug in your phone to get Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. So what more do you need, really? Things do start to fall apart when you get into the back seats, though. This has 5 fewer feet of passenger space and 5 fewer feet of cargo space, and that really does add up. I have a really hard time getting into the back seat of the EcoSport, which I don't in the HR-V. This is okay, it's just that it's not as practical as the HR-V.
Now, the HR-V has been around for a few years, and that means that it's had some time to kind of feel a little bit more refined. Although, that will probably be chalked up to the improved sound deadening materials in this year's model. You see, they've added more sound insulating materials under the floor and in the wheel wells, and these higher trim level versions of the car also come with active noise canceling technology. So in comparison, this Honda sounds much quieter and more refined than the Ford. But you know what? All of that sound insulation is for nothing once you put your foot down and try to get anywhere in a hurry. You see, the CVT kind of just revs the engine up really loudly. Listen to this. Yeah, and not only that, but that increase in noise is not proportional to the increase in acceleration that you get. So what I mean to say is, if you are one to be in a hurry all the time, or if you're frequently late, the HR-V will really not help you out. It'll just stress you out with all the noise that it makes while you're trying to get somewhere in a hurry. Besides that, though, this CVT is pretty fine. I mean, it's responsive, but most importantly, it's very fuel efficient. If you're looking for a more engaging drive, this car does have an S mode for the transmission, and there's these paddle shifters, but honestly, there's nothing really special about that. I think you should just leave it in the drive mode and enjoy the improved fuel economy. Maybe that can get you excited. In terms of road handling, the HR-V is actually pretty good. Now, it's not as fun or agile to drive as, say, the Honda Fit or the Civic, but this doesn't feel like the lumbering CR-V. It actually handles bumpy roads pretty well, but big potholes, well, that really unsettles this car. I mean, which car doesn't it unsettle unless you're in a Jeep Wrangler? That serves us right for living in a place with 4 seasons. Now this year, the all-wheel drive system has been updated so it can perform better on snow, but obviously we can't test that in the middle of summer. But it is pretty important that this car even comes with all-wheel drive because some of the HR-V's rivals, like the Nissan Kicks or the Toyota CHR, don't even come with all-wheel drive. So it's nice to have the option here. Where this car really shows off is with its available driver's assistance technology. You see, this car comes with lane keeping assist, forward collision warning, and adaptive cruise control. But in reality, all these features feel kind of budget and not like the real deal. For example, the adaptive cruise control doesn't seem to want to kick in unless you're going at least 30 kilometers an hour, which is a bit annoying. Oh yes, and instead of blind spot monitoring, you have that Honda Lane Watch technology, which isn't as nice as blind spot monitoring, but it's better than nothing. And all of this comes at a pretty decent price. At under $30,000, the HR-V is definitely a good bargain. It's got a ton of space, it's got a lot of technology, and it's very fuel efficient. It's a tiny bit more expensive than that Ford EcoSport, so let's check in with Sebastian and see how he's holding up in that car.
Now, I've heard a lot of people saying the EcoSport quote-unquote sucks, but I actually disagree. It's absolutely fine. Look, it's not going to set your hair on fire, but just between us gals, I kind of like it. It's all right. Honestly, I think that the suspension is set up just about perfectly. Yes, it leans a lot in fast on-ramps, but otherwise it's really compliant. When you hit a pothole, it feels like it really catches the bump in the road. So it's a very comfortable drive, not to mention these comfortable seats. And that's exactly what I want out of a silly little city car. I also just like Ford steering. I think that it's weighted pretty perfectly. It weighs enough to let you know that something's happening, and when you're going through stuff, it doesn't feel like it's flinging the wheel around. But it also is not so heavy that it requires an inordinate amount of effort. So I think that it drives just fine. Fuel economy is an issue. It's supposed to get 25 miles per gallon combined, but we struggle to get 21 miles per gallon with some city driving and some highway driving. And honestly, that wouldn't really be acceptable in a car twice this size. And it's not like this 2-liter 4-pot is kicking out the horsepowers either. Now, 166 horsepower is perfectly fine in a car this size, but that's all it is. It's not a quick car by any stretch of the imagination. So why is my fuel economy suffering so badly? Ultimately, I don't think that this is a bad car. I'd rather have the Fiesta, but I don't think that this sucks the joy out of the Fiesta platform like the HR-V sucks the joy out of the Fit platform. But in just about every other sense, the HR-V does a better job than this.
Well, it's nice that Ford has an offering in this segment. It has a long way to go before it's as good as the HR-V.
With more features, more MPGs, and more refinement, it's clear that the HR-V is today's winner.